Hello and welcome to the section on Paper 2 preparation for the IGCSE Computer Science syllabus. In this video we are going to be focusing on section B, and we are going to be exploring how you can best prepare yourselves for validation, verification, databases, pseudocode, trace tables, and hopefully any other topic I haven't mentioned here. So the format of this, if you are using this video and you don't have access to these slides, obviously do drop me a message underneath it. What we are going to be doing is walking through some example questions, and then wherever you can see text in red, this is going to be a question for you to then answer once you finished using this video. But to begin with here, so we are going to begin by looking at structure diagrams. So this is a very small percentage of paper 2, and this isn't a question which comes up frequently. So first question here is we need to tick one box and identify if the statement about structure diagrams is true or false. So we have got a few different questions here. So our first question is a structure diagram is a piece of code that is available throughout the structure of a program. Now this is false. So structure diagrams are a little bit like flowcharts, but they don't have any program code detail. So structure charts just show the different modules which are available within a program, but there will be no if statements, no loops, no print statements. There will be no code whatsoever. It will just show all of the modules and the hierarchy of these modules. Now, the next question here kind of brings us on to hierarchy. So a structure diagram shows the hierarchy of a system. So this is true. Next one is a structure diagram is another name for an array. So for those of you that were getting the data structure questions wrong in the paper 2 exam when we did mocks in January 22, an array is not another name for a structure diagram. An array or a list are data structures. So this is going to be false. And lastly, a structure diagram shows the relationship between different components of a system. So this is what we use structure diagrams for. We show how different modules are connected to one another, and maybe the different types of relationships they have with other modules in a system. So hopefully this is nice and straightforward and has allowed you to recap structure diagrams. So moving on to our next question here, and the reason why I am using Google Slides is because this allows us to insert text boxes on here when we write. It's a bit easier than Google Docs. So check 1. So programs can perform validation and verification checks when data is entered. So first of all, when we're validating data, what we are wanting to do here is check things like the data type, is the value which has been entered within the correct range of numbers or letters if we've set that, and is it of a correct minimum and maximum length. So these are types of validation checks. Where we are talking about verification, we've got things like double data entry or visual checks. So validation and verification are different. So first of all, the one which I'm going to write down first is going to be a length check. So when we're talking about validation and we're talking about length checks, I would like you to think about passwords. So whenever you set a password on Facebook, or you're probably too young for this now, Instagram or Gmail, wherever you kind of like setting a password, you are always asked to enter a password that is of a minimum and maximum length, and also it asks you to include a specific number of numbers or letters, uppercase letters, and also symbols. So the answer to this part is to ensure that data is over a minimum length and under a max length if defined. Okay, typically people won't have max lengths. Okay, you can have passwords which can have up to 50 characters, 100 characters. They may not set a min or definitely a max length. Now check number 2 here is range. So when we're talking about validation here, you may want to ask a user, just like our pre-release scenario, to enter a range of numbers, maybe 0 to 7 if we're looking at the number of days for booking. So this one here is going to be range. And the purpose of this is to ensure that the users are entering characters between a particular range. So to ensure users are entering numbers between a specific range given. Okay, so this is a 4-mark question, and hopefully this is straightforward. Now, hopefully, if you understand the difference between validation and also verification, you should now be able to attempt this next question here. So this is asking you to look at the pseudocode algorithm and identify a validation check that can be used, and also give suitable test data. Moving on with the next part of the question, it is asking us to talk about verification and answer questions and explain the difference between validation and also verification here. So we briefly discussed this in the first part already. So what I'm going to do here is give an example of one type of a verification check. So as mentioned during validation, we've got a double data entry, which is going to look to see and ask user to enter a password twice if we want to do double data entry. And we've also got a visual check. So is the piece of data the same as the piece of data which we are copying from a piece of paper? I'm going to do double data entry check for this one, because I think it's a more reliable type of verification. And now we need to explain the difference between validation and verification. So to validate means to check a number is in a particular range, i.e. 0 to 7. If it isn't, we would reject it. So that's validation. Verification means to confirm the data that has been entered is the same as a piece of data that has previously been assigned to a user, i.e. on a piece of paper. Okay, so hopefully you didn't fall asleep during that part. Let's move on to our next question. So fairly straightforward. Okay, so the next part we are going to be having a look at pseudocode now. And what we're being asked to do here is we are looking at an algorithm, and we can see that they have written an algorithm here. They're asking us to enter some values, and the question says that it should allow us to enter 50 numbers and then store these inside an array. Now we need to explain why this algorithm would never end. Now, when you're not in exam conditions and you are answering pseudocode questions, so what I would recommend that you do is you try to write out pseudocode in a similar format in the programming language which you have been taught. And in our case, this is in Python. Now, we know in Python that we only have while and for loops. We do not have repeat. So I've tried to create a very, very similar program inside Python here. Now, the reason why this pseudocode algorithm would never work, and it's a bit like our Python program, is because count is 0 at the beginning. And every time we enter a number here, it's going to keep count at 0 because we've said it's at 0 at the beginning, and then our while loop says while count is equal to 0. This counter is outside of our loop, which means the counter is never incrementing by 1, and it's always going to remain as 0, so it will forever ask us. When we are looking at the pseudocode algorithm here, until count is equal to 0 is at the bottom. This should actually be until count is equal to 50, and that means it would then stop. So this loop will continue iterating because count is always going to remain as 0 here. So first of all, let's add in a text box, and we were going to say that the value or variable is set to 1 at the beginning and at the end. If we want it to end, we should change until count is equal to 50. Okay, so this here is our first thing. When we are incrementing, This, I think, will probably be okay. It's inside of a loop, so this is probably going to be the only valid point which we need to add here. Okay, so variable is 0 at the beginning. We should have until count is equal to 50, and that means it will then allow our loop to end. So I wouldn't add anything else to this answer here. Now, all of your pseudo questions are going to follow a similar format. You are going to be asked to identify the problem, and then you're going to be asked to correct the problem here. So let's move on to the next part of this question. And the next part of this question is, it is asking us to amend the program. So this time we want the loop to terminate correctly. So what we are going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure that we've got until count is equal to 50. And the other thing, we want to prevent numbers from below 100 being entered, and we want to make sure that the values are being stored into the array correctly. So here, this is not going to put any values into the array. We should actually have input and then variable, and then we should be appending data into our array. So what we are now going to do is rewrite this algorithm. So we're going to say count is assignment 0. Okay, so that's going to remain the same. We are going to use our same repeats loop and make sure we show indentation. So we're then going to have input and our variable name. This is our array name, so I think it should be called input digit. Okay, next thing that we are going to do here is have our if statement. So we've said numbers below 100 should not be appended. So we're going to say if digit is greater than 99, what we want to do is we want to append the value into the array. So our array name, which we previously used, was values. This should have actually been a variable. So we are going to say values is going to be count, as that's our variable we set at the beginning. And this is going to be assignment, and then we're going to do number. Now, in a moment, I'm going to draw an arrow, and I will explain how we append data into arrays at IGCSE. So now we're going to have our count, and our count can be here. So count is assignment count plus 1, and then we are correcting our loop. And I hate switching between upper and lowercase when we're writing pseudocode. Really frustrating. Until count is equal to 50. Now, I'm going to draw an arrow, so just so it's nice and clear, hopefully. So basically, when we are appending data to a variable, it goes from inside this variable, and then we do assignment number. So that's my funny arrow. Hopefully you can see that. So values count. That allows us to look at where we're at within inside the array. And then we put our variable inside here. That is what the arrow is showing. This is pretty much finished here. So if you have any questions about this, obviously do let me know. Now, what we have to do now is it says describe how you would change your pseudocode in part B so that it prevents numbers from below 100 and above 200 from being stored. Okay, so we're already preventing numbers from below 100 being stored. So what we would probably need to do is use else if here. So let's insert a text box. So I would say implement an elif statement to compare max value and set this to 200. And algorithm is already preventing numbers below 100 being entered, as in our algorithm we have got here if digit is greater than 99. Okay, so that's already done. Now, there are some more questions for you to do here. So when you're using this video, and hopefully you are staying awake, this isn't particularly exciting, but hopefully you understand the format of the questions. You should then be attempting these other questions underneath. I've mentioned the year, so you can then actually answer the question. And remember to use Python for pseudocode questions so you can try to prove where the errors and problems are. What we are now going to do is we are going to move on to the databases question inside the June 2020 paper. So we'll be coming to flowcharts in our next session. So for now, we are going to review database questions. So let me just move this back across, as this is not going to be full screen at the moment. And the question which we're looking at here is a garden centre sells garden tools and stores details of these tools in a database named tools. Code is the primary key in the tools table. Now, what we need to do here is first of all state the purpose of the primary key in the tools table. So first of all, when we are talking about primary keys, we need to use these to enable us to uniquely identify records. So if you have got repeating pieces of data in here, so for example, hand weeder, if this is appearing multiple times, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to search for that if it continues to appear, and if you're looking for a unique record here. So primary identifiers, which we call primary keys, this allows us to identify records inside a database very, very quickly. So it says state the purpose of the primary key in the tools table, and as I just said, this allows us to uniquely identify tools. Now, when you're working on database questions, if you do not have a record and a field which is unique, in IGCSE questions, what you'll then be asked to do is create a unique identifier. So you'll be able to create one as like 001, 002, 003, and you'll be able to apply that to each of the records. Now, moving on to this question here, it says we need to list the output from the data shown in the tools table, and we need to show what would be given by this QBE, so this query by example. So if we were to run this inside, let's say, Microsoft Access, what would the output of this be? So let's go over to our question and let's add a text box below this question. Okay, so we can answer it. So what we're going to say here is, first of all, we have got tools and also tools, code, and description tick to yes. So these records are going to be shown. So we're going to say here, records with a tick in show will output fields code, description, price, quantity, check, and that's wrong. That's going to be quantity ordered. Okay, we can remove price as this is not ticked, so we're going to only output these different headings which are ticked here. The next thing is underneath price. So we are going to output only the devices that cost more than 40. We are then going to output devices which are greater than 0 in stock. So we'll only output records that are in stock, as greater than 0 is in quantity. And we've also got quantities ordered greater than 0 here. So this means we are going to have the following records output. So if we look at our paper, so in order for this to be true here, we have got hose 50 meters, this costs more than 40, and this is greater than 0, so it's in stock. So this is going to be record number 1. If we go back to the paper, we've got greater than 40 and greater than 0 in quantity. So the next one here is going to be quantity ordered, so greater than 50, and quantity stock is 50 and 50. Okay, so let's go back to my question quickly. So price is what we're looking at here. So price is greater than 50, so garden fork, and we've got quantity stock is greater than 0, so that means we're going to have garden fork also being output. And then the last one down here, we have got hedge clippers, not greater than 40, We've got edge trimmer, quantity ordered is 0, it's not greater than 0, unfortunately. So the last one we're going to be looking for here is lawnmower. This can't be the record because it's not greater than 0. If we go over here, it says quantity ordered needs to be greater than 0, so it can't be this. So I think it's going to be this one here. Nope, not greater than 0. So lawnmower petrol. Okay, so this is our 3 different records. So what we're going to do here is we're going to list lawn mower, garden fork, and also hose. Okay, I'm pretty sure it said we need to do this in descending order, so we'd need to change the order of these, but I'm not going to worry about this in this question. First device you should have is hose, because it's descending order. Then you should have garden fork, and then you should have lawnmower petrol. We also need to display the price is a no. Okay, so that's good. We would have to display the quantity ordered, so next to each of these. So lawnmower, if we look in our database table, we have got 25, so we must show the quantity ordered. If we press enter, I can leave you to do the descending order part. Garden fork, how many did we order? So we have got 50. And then we've got hose here. And hose is going to be 60. Okay, so the last thing you need to do is put these in descending order. So I may as well do this as we got this far. So if descending order, hose is going to go first. Okay, and then we're going to have our garden fork next, and then lawnmower will come last. And this is a complete answer to this question. So any slides which you can see where we have got red, obviously you're going to need to do these questions. I'm going to now add another one underneath databases here, and hopefully you now have a better understanding of validation and verification questions. You have a slightly improved understanding on pseudo questions, and you are able to use Python to help you solve your problems when you're preparing for exams. And also you have a better understanding of how to answer database questions. So we'll continue with flowcharts in our next lesson.